Did you honestly believe a splash of dirty gutter water would break the woman who already survived your marriage? That's what I should have yelled. That's what the old me would have screamed at the top of her lungs while shivering on the sidewalk. But I didn't say a word. When you hold the winning hand, you don't need to shout. You just lay your cards down and watch the other person realize they've bet their entire life on a bluff. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but that's a lie people tell themselves to feel better about being passive. Real justice isn't cold. It's scorching. It burns through bank accounts, reputations, and legacies until there is nothing left but ash and regret. And sometimes, justice looks like a 6'5" shadow stepping out of a matte black car to wrap a $400,000 coat around your soaked shoulders. My name is Layla Vance. If you check the tabloids from 6 months ago, I was the pathetic ex-wife, left with nothing but debt and a baby bump. But today I'm the woman who watched Cameron Hayes lose his entire existence in less than 24 hours. This is the story of how I went from a discarded, pregnant nobody to the only woman Elias Voss ever looked at. Before we go any further, I need to know who is in my corner. I need to know there are people out there who believe that bullies eventually get what's coming to them. If you are watching this and you have ever been kicked while you were down, if you've ever been humiliated by someone who claimed to love you, I need you to stop right now and hit that subscribe button. Do not let the Camerons of the world think they can win. If you scroll past this without joining our family, you are basically telling the algorithm that what he did to me was acceptable. Don't be that person. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment, "I'm still standing," below. Let's show them we are stronger together. But let me start from the beginning, before the rain, before the mud, and before the Rolls-Royce. 2 years ago, I was 24, naive, and blindly in love. I believed that marriage was a partnership. I believed that when Cameron said, "forever," he meant it as a promise, not a timeline for his boredom. I was the girl who packed his lunch, managed his schedule, and believed his lies about late nights at the office. I thought we were building an empire together. I didn't realize I was just the construction crew, and he was planning to evict me the moment the building was finished. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday. I found out he was leaving me for Liv on a Wednesday. Liv was an influencer, with 3 million followers, and a personality manufactured in a PR lab. She was everything I wasn't: loud, flashy, and expensive. Cameron told me he needed someone who matched his aesthetic. He told me I was too plain, too boring, too pregnant. He kicked me out of our apartment 3 days later. That brings us to yesterday. New York City was drowning under a gray sheet of rain. I had just left a prenatal checkup near Central Park. I was 8 months pregnant, my feet were swollen, and I was wearing the only nice dress I had left, a white silk maternity dress I bought for a baby shower that Cameron canceled. I was trying to hail a cab, shielding my belly from the downpour with a broken umbrella. That's when I heard the engine. You know that sound. The aggressive, throat-clearing roar of a Lamborghini Urus. I knew that sound better than my own heartbeat. I looked up and saw the neon green beast swerving through traffic. Cameron was driving. Liv was in the passenger seat, phone held high, the ring light reflecting in her sunglasses. They saw me. I saw Cameron's eyes lock onto mine. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator spotting wounded prey. He didn't slow down. He didn't swerve away. He accelerated. He aimed the car directly at the massive, oil-slicked puddle accumulating in the dip of the curb right in front of me. The wave hit me like a physical punch. It wasn't just water. It was sludge, street oil, trash, and freezing rain. It exploded over me, soaking the white silk instantly, plastering the fabric to my skin, turning my hair into dripping rats' tails. The cold shock made me gasp, my hands instinctively flying to my stomach to protect the twins. As the water settled, I heard it. The laughter. That's for leaving a real man. You broke nobody. Liv screamed, her voice shrill enough to cut through the rain. She was live streaming. I could see the hearts popping up on her screen from where I stood. Look at her. Look at the little drowned rat. The Lamborghini slowed down just enough for them to enjoy the show. Cameron was leaning over the center console, laughing so hard he was shaking. "Come crawling back now, Layla," he shouted. "Maybe I'll hire you as a maid." The live chat on Liv's phone must have been exploding with fire emojis and laughing faces. Thousands of people watching a pregnant woman get humiliated in the rain. But then, silence. Because I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just stood there. I wiped the muddy water from my eyelashes. And I smiled. It was the coldest smile I have ever worn. It was a smile that said, "You have just made the last mistake of your life." Behind me, the traffic had stopped. A matte black vehicle had pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a taxi. It was a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, dark as a moonless night, with windows heavily tinted. The rear door opened. No sound. Just the smooth hydraulic hiss of expensive engineering. A man stepped out. Elias Voss. If you don't know the name, it's because he doesn't want you to. He is the man who is unranked on Forbes because his wealth is too vast and too dangerous to print. He's the man who bought a social media platform on a Tuesday because someone disrespected his wife, then deleted the platform on Wednesday just to prove he could. He was dressed in all black, 6'5", with eyes that looked like shattered ice. He didn't look at the Lamborghini. He didn't look at the crowd gathering. He looked at me. He took off his coat. A black cashmere trench coat that cost more than Cameron's car. He didn't rush. He moved with the terrifying calm of a man who controls the weather. He walked over to me, ignoring the mud that splattered his Italian leather boots. He wrapped the coat around me. It was warm. It smelled like cedar and rain. He buttoned it over my stomach, his large hands gentle, precise. Then he kissed the top of my wet, muddy head. "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. Voss?" he whispered. "Yes," I said softly. He turned around. Cameron had stopped laughing. The Lamborghini was idling, but the engine suddenly sounded very small. Liv had lowered her phone. Her mouth was open. Elias Voss looked at Cameron. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. He just looked. It was a look of absolute, terrifying assessment. It was the look a butcher gives a pig before the knife drops. He held Cameron's gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turned, guided me into the back of the Rolls-Royce, and the door clicked shut. As we pulled away, I saw Cameron trying to restart his car to flee. It wouldn't start. And that was just the beginning. By the time Cameron pulled up to his Soho penthouse 3 hours later, after getting towed, his key fob didn't work. The building had a new owner. His company, delisted in 8 minutes flat. His trust fund, frozen by a judge who doesn't exist on any public record. Liv's Instagram account with 3.2 million followers simply vanished. Gone. User not found. But the real knife in the gut came at 2 a.m. inside the holding cell where Cameron found himself after accidentally triggering a federal investigation. A private courier delivered a single envelope to him. Inside was a paternity test. The twins I am carrying, 0% his DNA. And the marriage certificate attached showed that Elias and I were married the same day Cameron kicked me out. At the bottom of the envelope, in my handwriting, was a note. "You wanted the world to see me humiliated one last time. Tomorrow morning, the world will watch you lose everything, forever." Cameron is scheduled to appear in a closed court in 7 hours. Elias just posted one thing on his empty social media account. "I don't get angry. I get permanent." You need to understand something. The man sitting next to me in this car, the man holding my hand, isn't just rich. He is a force of nature. And what he is about to do in that courtroom has never been done before. I need you to understand that I wasn't always the woman in the Rolls-Royce. I wasn't always the woman who could silence a billionaire with a single look. 3 years ago, I was just Layla. The girl who grew up in the system, the girl who had never known what it felt like to have a permanent address, let alone a safety net. When you grow up without parents, You develop a desperate, aching hunger for belonging. You don't just want love, you want a deeply rooted anchor. You want to know that no matter how hard the wind blows, you aren't going to drift away. That hunger. That was my fatal flaw. That was the crack in the foundation that Cameron Hayes slipped through. I met Cameron at a coffee shop in the financial district. He wasn't driving a Lamborghini then. He was driving a leased sedan that was 2 months behind on payments. He was wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, sweating over a pitch deck for a tech startup that was bleeding money. He looked desperate. He looked hungry. And when he looked at me, he looked like he had found the answer to a prayer. He charmed me. God, was he good at it. He didn't use pickup lines. He used vulnerability. He told me he was trying to build a legacy, but he was drowning in the details. He told me he had the vision but needed someone with the brain to execute it. I was working as a junior analyst at a logistics firm, overqualified and underpaid. I looked at this man with the blue eyes and the messy hair, and I didn't see a user. I saw a partner. We moved in together 3 months later. I quit my job to work for his company, Hayes Solutions, for free. I need you to really hear that. I worked for free. I cashed out my tiny 401k to pay our rent so he could pay his developers. I stayed up until 4 a.m. fixing the code he broke. I wrote the business plans. I handled the clients who were ready to walk because of his arrogance. And he loved me for it. Or at least, he loved what I did for him. He would come home at night, high on the adrenaline of a small win I had secured for him, and spin me around the kitchen. He'd say, "Layla, baby, when we make it, it's going to be you and me on top of the world. I promise. You're my lucky charm." I believed him. I believed him because I had nobody else to believe. If you are listening to this and you are currently setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, I need you to pause. I need you to look at your screen. Are you the partner, or are you the fuel? Because I was the fuel, and I was burning out fast. If you know exactly what that feels like, to give 110% to someone giving you 10%, hit the like button right now. Do it for the old Layla, who didn't know better. And if you don't subscribe to this channel right now, you might miss the warning signs in your own life that I'm about to describe. Don't let that happen. Click subscribe. It's free, unlike the cost of my mistake. The first betrayal wasn't the affair. The first betrayal was the success. 18 months in, we were running on fumes. We had one shot left. I had spent 2 weeks drafting a proposal for a ghost investor, someone in the private sector known for backing high-risk, high-reward tech. Nobody knew who he was, just that his firm, Voss Capital, rarely said yes. I wrote the pitch of my life. I poured my soul into those projections. I showed exactly how Hayes Solutions could dominate the market if we just had the liquidity. Cameron didn't write a single word of it. He was too busy picking out the tie he was going to wear to the meeting. The day of the meeting, Cameron wouldn't let me go. "Layla, look at you," he said, gesturing to my outfit. I was wearing jeans and a thrifted blazer because we couldn't afford dry cleaning for my good suit. "You look tired. You look stressed. These investors want confidence. They want alpha energy. Let me handle the room. You stay here and keep the servers running." It stung. It felt like a slap. But I swallowed it. I told myself he was right. I was tired. I was the engine room. He was the hood ornament. That was our dynamic. He came back 4 hours later. He was silent. Then, he grabbed me and kissed me so hard our teeth clashed. "We got it," he whispered. "We got the funding. $5 million, Layla. We're rich." I screamed. I cried. We popped a bottle of cheap champagne. I asked him, "What did they say? Did they like the projection about the Asian markets? Did they ask about the scalability?" Cameron waved his hand dismissively. "The guy didn't even read the binder, Layla. He just liked me. He said he liked my vibe. He said he invests in people, not paper. It was all me, baby." I found out later that was a lie. The investor, Elias Voss, hadn't even met Cameron that day. He had sent a proxy. And the proxy had specific instructions: fund the company based on the written proposal. The author of this document is the asset. Cameron took the check, signed his name, and never told me that the money was actually a bet on my brain, not his smile. That was the moment the balance shifted. Suddenly, Cameron wasn't the struggling dreamer anymore. He was the CEO with a $5 million war chest. And money doesn't change people, it unmasks them. He started buying new clothes. He leased the Lamborghini. He started talking about brand image. And then, he brought her in.
Leave.
We need a social media manager, Cameron told me over dinner one night. He was texting while he spoke to me. He did that a lot lately. Someone fresh. Someone who gets the algorithm. I was 6 months pregnant by then. We had found out about the twins a few weeks prior. I was exhausted, huge, and hormonal. The idea of handing off the social media sounded like a relief. Sure, I said. Do you have someone in mind? I met this girl, Liv. She's got great energy, huge following. She can put us on the map. He hired her the next day. I met Liv on a Monday morning. She walked into the office, an office I had painted, with furniture I had assembled, wearing a skirt that looked like a belt and perfume that smelled like aggressive vanilla. She was beautiful. I can admit that. She was 22, glowing, and had that effortless confidence of a girl who has never had to struggle for a meal. "You must be Layla," she chirped, looking me up and down. Her eyes lingered on my swollen stomach. "Wow, you're glowing." In a motherly way. It was a subtle dig, the kind of insult that gives you paper cuts. But I smiled. I wanted to be nice. I wanted to trust Cameron. "Welcome to the team," I said. "Oh, Cameron has told me so much about you," she said, leaning against my desk. "He says you're the administrative backbone. It's so sweet that he keeps you involved." Keeps me involved. I co-founded the company. I own 50% of the stock, or so I thought. I went to Cameron's office immediately. "She thinks I'm a secretary, Cam," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Cameron didn't look up from his computer. "Don't be sensitive, Layla. She's young. She doesn't know the corporate structure. Besides, you are doing admin stuff lately. You're nesting. You should be focusing on the babies." "I'm focusing on the babies. But I'm also the CFO." Right, he waved me off. "Just be nice to her. She has 3 million followers. If she tags us, our valuation doubles." So I was nice. I was the perfect, supportive partner. I trained her. I showed her our brand voice. I even brought her coffee. And all the while, she was recording stories for her Instagram, positioning herself next to Cameron, cropping me out of photos, laughing at his jokes a little too loudly. The betrayal was a slow creep. It was late nights at the office where they were brainstorming. It was business trips to Miami that I couldn't go on because I was high risk for travel. It was the way they stopped talking when I walked into a room. But I refused to see it. I refused to believe that the man I had built from the ground up would throw me away. I told myself it was just business. I told myself I was being a jealous, hormonal pregnant woman. I gaslit myself so he didn't have to. Then came the paperwork. About a month before the puddle incident, Cameron came home with a stack of documents. "It's for the trust," he said, pouring me a glass of water. He was being unusually attentive, rubbing my shoulders. "For the twins. I want to make sure our assets are protected. My lawyers drew this up. It just moves your shares into a family trust. Safer that way." I looked at the papers. Legalese. Pages and pages of it. "Should I have a lawyer look at this?" I asked. Cameron pulled back, looking hurt. "Layla, I am the father of your children. Do you think I would hurt you?" This is for us. This is so we can buy the house in the Hamptons. If you don't trust me, then what are we even doing? He played the victim card perfectly. He knew my weakness. He knew I was terrified of losing him, of breaking up our family before it even started. I signed. I signed away my 50% stake in the company. I signed away my rights to the intellectual property. I signed a document that essentially turned me from a co-owner into an unpaid contractor with zero equity. He kissed my forehead when I put the pen down. "Good girl," he whispered. "Now we're safe." 2 weeks later, the locks on the office were changed. I tried my key card. Red light. I tried the keypad. Error. I called Cameron. Straight to voicemail. I called the front desk. The receptionist, a girl I had hired, sounded uncomfortable. Lila. Mr. Hayes said you're on maternity leave. Indefinite maternity leave. He said you aren't to be let up to the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt the twins kick, a sharp protest from the inside. I waited in the lobby for 3 hours. Finally, Cameron walked out. Liv was on his arm. They were laughing. They looked like the golden couple. They looked like success. He stopped when he saw me. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. "Layla, go home," he sighed, like he was talking to a disobedient dog. "You're making a scene." "My key doesn't work," I said, my voice trembling. "Yeah, about that." He checked his watch. "We're pivoting. The company is moving in a new direction. A younger, more vibrant direction. And honestly, you don't fit the brand anymore." "I built this brand," I whispered. "You did the paperwork, Layla," Liv chimed in, smacking her gum. "Cameron was the vision. And let's be real. Look at you." She gestured to my stomach, my swollen ankles, my tired face. "You're not exactly tech unicorn material right now. You're more soccer mom." "Go home, Layla," Cameron said, turning toward the revolving doors. "I'll send you a severance check. It should cover diapers for a month or 2. They walked out. They got into the Lamborghini. I stood there in the lobby of the building I had found for us, surrounded by security guards I knew by name, and I realized with a sick, cold clarity, I didn't just lose my job. I had signed away my life to a man who had been planning this the moment the money hit the bank. I went home to our apartment. My key didn't work there either. My clothes were in garbage bags in the hallway. I had nothing. No money. No home. No husband. Just 2 babies growing inside me and a heart that had been smashed into dust. I spent that night in a motel in Queens, counting the crumpled bills in my wallet. I had $40. I thought that was rock bottom. I thought nothing could be worse than that night. But I was wrong. Because Cameron wasn't done with me. He didn't just want me gone, he wanted to erase me. He wanted to make sure that nobody would ever believe I was the brains behind Hayes Solutions. He wanted to break my spirit so completely that I would never fight back. Little did I know, while I was crying in that motel room, a phone was ringing in a high-rise office on the other side of the city. Elias Voss was on the line, and he had just found out that the asset he invested in me had been fired. The storm was coming, but before the storm could clear the air, I had to walk through the mud. I dragged myself through the next few weeks, sleeping on friends' couches, trying to get a lawyer to take my case. Nobody would touch it. Cameron had the best legal team in the city. I was a liability. And then came the rain. Then came the white dress. Then came the moment on the sidewalk where Cameron decided that taking my company and my home wasn't enough. He needed to take my dignity. But he forgot one thing. When you strip a woman of everything she has to lose, you also strip her of her fear. He thought he was drowning me. He didn't realize he was baptizing me. And he certainly didn't realize that the matte black Rolls-Royce following his Lamborghini didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to the man who had read my business plan 2 years ago and had been waiting for the right moment to correct his mistake. Act 3 is going to hurt. Act 3 is where I made the choice that scared me more than poverty. But before we get there, I need to ask you one thing. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone look at you and see nothing when you knew you were everything? If you have, share this story. Share it for the underdogs. Because Elias Voss didn't just open a car door for me. He opened a war. The silence inside a Rolls-Royce isn't just an absence of noise, it's a physical weight. It's a vacuum that sucks the air out of your lungs and replaces it with the scent of hand-stitched leather and filtered oxygen. 1 second, I was standing in the freezing rain, mud dripping down my legs, the sound of Liv's laughter ringing in my ears like a siren. The next, the heavy door clicked shut, sealing the world away. The rain was just a silent movie playing against the tinted glass. The screams of the city were gone. I was shivering so hard my teeth were clicking together. I sat there, huddled in Elias Voss's $400,000 coat, dripping filthy sludge onto seats that probably cost more than my childhood home. I didn't dare look at him. I stared at my knees, watching a droplet of brown water slide off the hem of the coat and land on the lamb's wool floor mat. "I'm ruining your car," I whispered. My voice sounded broken, rusty. "The car is replaceable," Elias said. His voice was deep, a low rumble that I felt in my chest more than I heard with my ears. "Dignity is not." I looked up then. Up close, Elias Voss was terrifying. He wasn't handsome in the way Cameron was. Cameron was a catalog model, symmetrical, shiny, easy to digest. Elias was a landscape. Sharp angles, a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, and eyes that were so dark they looked like inkwells. He wasn't looking at the mud. He was looking at my hands, which were protectively clutching my stomach. "Are the children hurt?" he asked. "Not are you okay, but are the children hurt?" "No," I said, my hands tightening. "Just startled. Cold." He reached into a hidden compartment and pulled out a bottle of water and a thick, white towel. He didn't hand them to me. He uncapped the water and held it out. I took it, my fingers brushing his. His skin was warm. Mine was ice. "Drink," he commanded. It wasn't a suggestion. I drank. The water was room temperature, perfect. "Why?" I asked, lowering the bottle. "You're Elias Voss. You don't pick up stray dogs in the rain." He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. He looked comfortable, like he was sitting in a boardroom, not next to a woman covered in street filth. "I don't like thieves, Layla." My heart skipped a beat. "Thieves?" 2 years ago, my firm invested $5 million in Hayes Solutions, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. I didn't invest because of the pitch meeting. I didn't invest because of Cameron's smile. I invested because I read the code in the appendix. I read the market analysis. I recognized the syntax. It was brilliant. It was aggressive. It was familiar. He paused, tilting his head slightly. "I have a team of analysts who track talent. We knew Cameron didn't write that code. His college transcripts show he failed Intro to Java twice. We knew you wrote it." I stared at him, the shock momentarily numbing the cold. "You knew?" "I bet on the jockey, not the horse," Elias said calmly. "I bet on you. I assumed that since you were partners, the money would empower you. I was waiting for you to take the lead. Instead, I watched you fade into the background. I watched him take credit for your genius. And then, I watched him fire you." He reached into the pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen and handed it to me. "Look." I took the tablet. It was a live document. A contract of sale. "What is this?" "That," Elias said, "is a draft agreement. Cameron is selling Hayes Solutions to a Chinese conglomerate tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for $200 million. The air left my lungs. "What?" "He's cashing out," Elias continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "He stole your work, he stole your company, and now he's selling it for parts. Once he signs that deal tomorrow, Your intellectual property is gone. It will be buried in an overseas shell company. You will never see a dime. And he will be $200 million richer. I felt sick, nauseous. The image of Cameron and Liv laughing in the Lamborghini flashed in my mind. They weren't just laughing because I was wet. They were laughing because they had won. They were hours away from the finish line, and I was just roadkill they had swerved to hit on their victory lap. I can't stop him, I whispered, tears finally stinging my eyes. I signed the papers. I signed the trust. I gave him everything. I have no money for a lawyer. I have nothing. You have me, Elias said. The car turned a sharp corner, but the suspension was so good I barely felt it. Why would you help me? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm a liability. I'm a pregnant broke. You are a bad investment I intend to fix, he cut me off. I hate losing money, Layla. And right now, my $5 million is about to walk away in Cameron Hayes's pocket. I don't allow that. He took the tablet back from me and set it aside. Then, he turned his body fully toward me. The intensity of his gaze made me want to shrink into the leather, but I forced myself to hold it. I have a proposition, he said. A job. I asked hopefully. I can code. I can. No, not a job. He looked at my stomach, then back to my eyes. I need a wife. The silence that followed was louder than the rain. Excuse me. My board of directors is old-fashioned, Elias said, adjusting his cufflink. They believe a man with my level of unsupervised capital is a risk. They want to see stability. They want to see a legacy. There is a merger pending, a massive acquisition of a data privacy firm. The sellers are conservative. They won't sign unless they believe I am grounded, family-oriented. He said the words family-oriented, like one might say radioactive. You want me to pretend to be your wife? I don't do pretend, Elias said. I want you to marry me. Tonight. I laughed. It was a hysterical, jagged sound. You're insane. I'm 8 months pregnant with another man's children. I'm covered in mud. I'm a disaster. You are perfect, he countered. You are desperate. You are motivated. And you have a brain that rivals my own. I don't want a trophy wife, Layla. I can buy a model. I can buy a princess. I want a partner. I want a wartime consigliere. And right now, you are at war. He leaned in closer. I could smell the faint scent of rain and expensive scotch on his breath. Here is the deal. We marry. Tonight. My lawyers are already preparing the paperwork. We backdate the union. Backdate. I blinked. Is that even legal? I am Elias Voss, he said simply. The laws are suggestions. We will document that we were married privately 6 months ago, before Cameron forced you to sign those trust papers. My mind raced, trying to catch up with his logic. If we were married 6 months ago. Then under New York state law, Elias finished for me, a cruel, satisfied glint in his eyes. Anything you signed regarding your assets without my consent is voidable. If we were married, your intellectual property became community property of our marriage. Cameron didn't steal from a single woman. He stole from us. He stole from me. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. If I was Mrs. Elias Voss, and I had been Mrs. Elias Voss for 6 months, then Cameron hadn't just screwed over his ex-girlfriend. He had embezzled from the wife of the most dangerous capitalist in America. If we do this, Elias said, his voice dropping to a whisper, I will destroy him. I won't just sue him. I will dismantle him. I will freeze his assets. I will seize the company. I will expose the fraud. And that $200 million. It won't go to him. It will go to the trust fund for those twins. He looked at my stomach again, and for a second, the ice in his eyes melted. He tried to drown you in mud, Layla. I am offering you the chance to drown him in ink. He held out his hand. It was large, steady, waiting. "But you have to decide now," he said. "We are 5 minutes away from the courthouse. Once we turn that corner, there is no going back. You belong to this life. You belong to the game. No more crying. No more victimhood. You become a predator. Or I can have the driver take you to a shelter, give you $10,000 cash, and you can disappear." The choice hung in the air. Option A, take the cash. Run. Raise my babies in safety, but in poverty, watching Cameron live the life I built for him on Instagram. Watching Liv play mother to a brand built on my sweat. Option B, take the hand of the devil. Marry a stranger. Become a weapon. I looked down at the white silk dress. It was ruined. The old Layla was ruined. The girl who believed in love and fairy tales was dead in that puddle. I felt a kick from the inside. A strong, determined thump against my ribs. My babies. They deserved a father. But more than that, they deserved a mother who didn't let people walk all over her. They deserved a mother who fought. I looked up at Elias. I didn't wipe the mud off my face. I wore it like war paint. "Do you promise?" I asked. "Do you promise he will lose everything?" Elias didn't smile. He just nodded. "I promise." I reached out and placed my cold, dirty hand into his. "Drive," I said. Elias tapped the partition glass. The driver didn't say a word, but the car surged forward. We weren't going to a shelter. We were going to war. But there was one thing I didn't ask. One thing I was too angry, too desperate to consider. I didn't ask what Elias Voss really wanted in return. I thought it was just business. I thought I was just a strategic asset to him. I was wrong. Because as the car sped toward the courthouse, Elias didn't let go of my hand. He held it tight. And as I looked out the window at the rain-streaked city, I didn't realize that I had just signed a contract that would cost me much more than my signature. I had just invited a monster into my bed to kill a rat. And monsters don't just leave when the job is done. The inciting catastrophe wasn't the mud. It was the moment I said, "I do," to a man whose net worth was, yes. The car stopped. The rain hammered on the roof. "Ready?" Elias asked. I took a deep breath. "Ready." You think the hardest part of a war is the fighting. It's not. The hardest part is the waiting. It's sitting in the dark, sharpening your knife, while the person you're about to destroy is out there popping champagne, thinking they've already won. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I had just legally bound myself to a man I had met twice. Elias's penthouse wasn't a home. It was a command center suspended 60 stories above Manhattan. Everything was glass, steel, and silence. There were no photos on the walls. No knickknacks. No sign that a human being actually lived there. It was as cold and beautiful as the man who owned it. After the courthouse, where a judge terrified of Elias had signed our backdated certificate without asking a single question, Elias had brought me here. "Shower," he had said, pointing to a bathroom that was larger than my entire old apartment. "Scrub the mud off. Scrub him off. When you walk out of that door, Layla Hayes effectively ceases to exist. You are Layla Voss." I stood under the scalding water for 45 minutes. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw. I watched the brown, oily street water swirl down the drain, taking the last pieces of my old life with it. I washed away the humiliation. I washed away the fear. Or at least, I tried to. When I stepped out, wrapped in a robe that felt like a cloud, I found clothes laid out on the bed. Not a white silk dress this time. Black. Everything was black. Cashmere sweaters, tailored maternity trousers, boots that looked like they could kick through a brick wall. I put them on. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked dangerous. She looked tired, yes. Her eyes were rimmed with red. But she looked expensive. She looked untouchable. I walked out into the living room. Elias was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city lights. He was on the phone. "Let him sign," Elias was saying. His voice was quiet, lethal. "Don't interrupt the meeting. Let him put his ink on the paper. Let the wire transfer initiate. Then, and only then, do you execute the freeze." He hung up and turned to me. He didn't compliment the clothes. He just nodded, as if inspecting a soldier who had passed inspection. "Come here," he said. "Watch." He gestured to the massive television screen mounted on the wall. It was tuned to a financial news network. And there he was. Cameron. He was standing on a podium, Liv clinging to his arm like a barnacle. Flashbulbs were popping. He looked golden. Triumphant. "We are thrilled to announce the acquisition of Hayes Solutions," Cameron was saying into the microphones. He looked directly into the camera. He looked directly at me. "This technology is my baby. I built it from scratch. It's been a long road, but true innovation always rises to the top." "My baby," I whispered. My hands clenched into fists. He's calling my code his baby while he tries to erase his actual children. Liv leaned into the microphone, giggling. "Cameron is just a genius. It's so inspiring to watch a self-made man get what he deserves." "Self-made," I scoffed. "I wrote the kernel for that software while he was playing video games. I built the client list while he was sleeping with her." "Let them talk," Elias said. He handed me a tablet. "The more they talk, the deeper the grave." I looked at the tablet. It was a live feed of Cameron's bank accounts. Illegal. Probably. But I didn't care anymore. I saw the pending transaction. $200 million. "The deal closes tomorrow at 9 a.m., Elias explained. "The moment the money hits his account, the trap snaps. We file the injunction. We reveal the marriage certificate. We claim 50% of the assets as marital property, and we freeze the other 50% pending a fraud investigation." "He'll fight it," I said. "He has lawyers." "He has employees," Elias corrected. "I have disciples. My lawyers don't lose, Layla. But there is a complication." My stomach dropped. "What complication?" Elias swiped the screen to a new document. It was a paternity petition. Cameron's legal team filed this an hour ago. He's anticipating a child support claim. He is preemptively denying paternity. He is claiming you were indiscriminate. He is requesting a DNA test to prove the children aren't his so he can wash his hands of them completely. The room spun. "He knows they are his," I choked out. "He saw the ultrasounds. He heard the heartbeats." "He doesn't care about the truth," Elias said. "He cares about the narrative. If he paints you as a cheater, he discredits your character. If you are a liar, then your claim to the company is easier to dismiss." I felt the tears coming again, but Elias stepped closer. He didn't hug me. He didn't offer comfort. He offered strategy. "Let him demand the test," Elias said. "We will give him one." "But the test will prove he's the father," I said, confused. "That just links us together forever. I don't want him to have rights to my babies." Elias looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something dark and amused in his eyes. "Who said the test will prove he's the father?" I stared at him. "Because he is the father." "Layla," Elias said softly, "you are Mrs. Voss now. The twins, they are Vosses. Cameron wants to claim he isn't the father? Fine. We will agree with him." "I don't understand." "I have a doctor on standby," Elias said. "We will conduct the paternity test. And the results will show exactly what Cameron wants them to show. 0% match. But then he wins. He gets off scot-free." "No," Elias shook his head. "If he isn't the father, he has no parental rights. He cannot sue for custody. He cannot demand visitation. He becomes a stranger. And once he is legally a stranger, we take the money anyway. Because the claim to the money isn't based on the children. It's based on the marriage. He walked over to a table and poured a glass of water. We cut the cord, Layla. We sever the bloodline. He wants to be free of you. We will grant his wish. And then we will take every dollar he has, and he won't even be able to look at pictures of the children he abandoned. It was diabolical. It was perfect. But the pressure was building. My phone, my old phone, which I had turned back on, started buzzing. Text messages flooded in. From Cameron, saw you got into a nice car. Finally found a sugar daddy? Hope he pays better than I did. From Liv, hey girlie. Just saw the news? We're rich. Oh well. Maybe we'll send you a stroller. If you apologize. From Cameron, don't bother showing up to court for child support. My lawyers will destroy you. You'll end up in jail for extortion. I read them out loud to Elias. Reply, Elias said. What do I say? Say nothing about the money. Say nothing about the marriage. Just write, see you in court. I typed it out. My fingers were shaking. I hit send. The response was immediate. A laughing emoji. He has no idea, I whispered. No, Elias said. He is walking into a thresher. But then, the reality of my situation hit me. I looked around the penthouse. I looked at this stranger who was masterminding the destruction of my ex. Why? I asked again. You still haven't told me the real reason. You said you hate thieves. But this is personal, Elias. You're going to incredible lengths. Why do you hate Cameron Hayes so much? Elias turned away from the window. The shadows fell across his face, making him look more machine than man. Because he reminds me of my father, he said. The confession hung in the air. My father was a man who took credit for things he didn't build, Elias continued, his voice devoid of inflection. He broke people. He used them until they were husks, then discarded them. He did it to his partners. He did it to my mother. He walked over to me, stopping just inches away. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. My mother was brilliant, gentle. She built his empire from the shadows. And when she got sick, when she became a liability, he divorced her. He cut her off. She died in a state-run hospital while he was buying his third yacht. Elias's eyes were winter itself. I promised myself that if I ever saw a man like that again, a man who throws away a brilliant woman because she is inconvenient, I wouldn't just stop him. I would erase him. He reached out and adjusted the collar of my new coat. You are not a charity case, Layla. You are my second chance to save her. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just business. This was penance. I was the proxy for a ghost. Get some rest, Elias said, stepping back. Tomorrow is going to be violent. He turned to leave the room. Elias. I called out. He stopped. Thank you. He didn't turn around. Don't thank me yet. Wait until the ink dries. I went to the guest bedroom. I laid down on the sheets that cost more than my student loans. I put my hands on my stomach. The twins were restless. They could feel the adrenaline in my blood. I stared at the ceiling. In 7 hours, Cameron would sign the deal. In 8 hours, he would lose the money. In 9 hours, he would find out he wasn't a father. And in 10 hours, he would realize he was married to the most powerful man in New York, through me. But as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I couldn't shake a terrifying thought. Elias Voss was a weapon, a nuclear bomb in a suit. I had aimed him at Cameron. But what happens when the target is destroyed? What happens to the person holding the trigger? I was Mrs. Voss now, and I had a feeling that getting out of this marriage was going to be infinitely harder than getting into it. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I didn't dream of Cameron. I dreamt of ice. I dreamt of snow. I dreamt of a matte black car driving silently through the dark, with no driver at the wheel. And I was locked in the back seat. When I woke up the next morning, the bed next to me was cold. Not just empty. Cold. Like no one had ever slept there. The digital clock on the bedside table reads 6 a.m. The court hearing was at 9 a.m. The sale of Hayes Solutions was scheduled to close at 9:15 a.m. I sat up, the silence of the penthouse pressing against my ears. I felt different. Heavier. The adrenaline from yesterday had worn off, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache in my chest. I looked at the black clothes hanging on the wardrobe door, the uniform of Layla Voss. I got up and walked out into the main living area. It was empty. A single cup of black coffee sat on the marble island in the kitchen, steam still rising from it, next to a note written in sharp, architectural handwriting. I have a meeting with the partners. The driver will collect you at 8 o'clock. Do not be late. Do not answer your phone. Do not leave the building. No good morning. No how are the babies. Just orders. I drank the coffee. It was bitter. It woke me up, but it didn't settle my stomach. I started pacing. The apartment was too big, too sterile. I felt like a specimen in a jar. I wandered down the hallway, past the locked doors. One door was slightly ajar. It was Elias's home office. I know I shouldn't have gone in. I know that in movies, this is the part where the girl finds the severed head in the freezer and realizes she married a serial killer. But I wasn't scared of physical danger. I was scared of the unknown. I was married to a ghost, and I needed to know what haunted him. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, illuminated only by the glow of a massive server rack in the corner. The walls were lined with screens, all currently asleep. But on the massive mahogany desk, there was a single, thick file folder. It wasn't a digital pad. It was paper. Old school. The kind of file you keep when you don't want a digital footprint. I walked over to it. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that the twins seemed to feel, kicking in response. The label on the file didn't say Cameron Hayes. It didn't say Hayes Solutions. It said Project, Phoenix, Candidate L. Vance. Elle Vance. Layla Vance. My maiden name. I opened the folder. The first page wasn't a legal document. It was a photograph. It was a picture of me, taken from a distance, 2 years ago. I was sitting on a park bench, eating a sandwich, writing in my notebook. The timestamp in the corner was 3 days before Cameron and I even pitched to Voss Capital. I turned the page. Another photo. Me and Cameron arguing outside a restaurant 6 months ago. Another one. Me crying in the pharmacy aisle looking at prenatal vitamins. Another one. Liv entering our apartment building while I was at work. My breath hitched. Elias had been watching me. Not just since yesterday. Not just since the pitch meeting. He had been watching me for years. I flipped through the pages frantically. It was a timeline. A detailed, forensic timeline of my life, my relationship, and my suffering. Entry, March 12th. Subject, Cameron Hayes. Note, Hayes has initiated contact with Olivia, Liv, Moretti. Infidelity confirmed. Financial divergence detected. He is siphoning funds from the joint account. Action. Observe. Observe. He knew. Elias knew Cameron was stealing from me in March. He knew Cameron was cheating. He watched it happen. I turned the page. Entry, May 4th. Subject, Trust Fund Documents. Note, Hayes is preparing documents to strip Vance of equity. Legal assessment. The documents are binding if signed. Vance is emotionally compromised and likely to sign. Action. Allow execution. I dropped the file. The papers scattered across the floor like dead leaves. Allow execution. He could have warned me. He could have sent an anonymous email. He could have called. He had the power to stop Cameron months ago. He could have crushed the company before I signed my life away. But he didn't. He let me sign. He let me lose everything. He let me be humiliated, homeless, and broken. Why? I fell to my knees and grabbed the last page of the report. It was a psychological profile. Candidate L. Vance possesses genius-level aptitude for algorithmic architecture, but suffers from significant emotional dependency. She will not separate from the host, Hayes, voluntarily. She requires a catastrophic event to sever loyalty. Only when she is completely devoid of assets and hope will she be amenable to acquisition. Wait for the breaking point. Wait for the mud. Wait for the mud. He didn't save me. He harvested me. He waited for the puddle. He probably knew exactly when and where Cameron would be. That Rolls-Royce didn't just happen to be there. He was parked, watching, waiting for the exact moment I was crushed enough to accept his hand. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't a wife. I was an asset he had acquired at a discount. He let me get beaten down so he could buy me for cheap. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to grab the trash can by the desk. I dry-heaved, my body shaking with a violent, cold rage. I had traded a man who stabbed me in the front for a man who had been slowly poisoning me from the shadows for years. Cameron was a monster, yes. But Elias was the devil. Cameron acted on impulse and greed. Elias acted on calculation. He had engineered my rock bottom because he needed a desperate coder, not a happy partner. I sat back on my heels, tears streaming down my face. I felt more alone than I had in the rain. At least in the rain, I knew who my enemy was. I looked at the phone in my hand. I wanted to run. I wanted to call the police. But what would I say? My billionaire husband watched me get cheated on and didn't tell me? That's not a crime. That's just cruelty. And then I remembered the contract. The marriage. If I left now, if I didn't show up to court, Cameron wins. Cameron gets the $200 million. Liv wins. They get away with it. And Elias, he keeps his money. He just writes me off as a failed experiment. But if I stayed, if I got in that car, I would be handing the victory to the man who orchestrated my pain just to own my brain. I was trapped. Trapped between the man who broke me and the man who let it happen. If you are listening to this, and you have ever realized that the person helping you up is the same person who greased the floor, I need you to understand the level of darkness that fell over me in that room. It's a specific kind of cold. It's the realization that you are the only person on earth who actually cares about your survival. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button. Because I need witnesses. I need you to see what I did next. I need you to know that I didn't break. I wiped my face. I stood up. I gathered the papers. I put them back in the file. I placed the file exactly where I found it. I walked back to the bedroom. I put on the black coat. I put on the sunglasses. I looked in the mirror. Layla Vance was dead. She died in the puddle. Mrs. Voss. She was a lie. But the woman looking back at me, she was something else. She was a grenade with the pin pulled. I would go to court. I would destroy Cameron. I would watch him bleed out financially. And then I would turn my sights on Elias. He wanted a wartime consigliere. He wanted a ruthless partner. Congratulations, Elias. You created one. At 8 a.m. sharp, the buzzer rang. Mrs. Voss, the driver's voice came over the intercom. The car is ready. I'm coming down, I said. I walked out of the penthouse. I didn't look back. The elevator ride down took 45 seconds. When the doors opened, the lobby was swarming with paparazzi. They had found out. Someone had leaked the marriage license. Layla, is it true? Are you really married to Elias Voss? Did you marry him for the money? What about Cameron? I didn't stop. Security guards cleared a path. I saw the flashbulbs exploding like gunfire. I climbed into the back of the Rolls-Royce. Elias was already inside. He was reading a newspaper on a tablet. He didn't look up. He looked calm, powerful, and utterly indifferent. "You're on time," he said. I looked at him. I looked at the sharp line of his jaw, the expensive suit, the hands that had buttoned my coat yesterday. I looked at him and saw the predator beneath the skin. "I read the file," I said. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Elias didn't flinch. He didn't gasp. He slowly lowered the tablet and turned to look at me. His eyes were unreadable. "Which file?" he asked, his voice steady. "Project Phoenix," I whispered. "You watched. You knew. You let him destroy me." Elias held my gaze. For a long moment, I thought he would lie. I thought he would deny it. But he didn't. "Yes," he said. Just one word. "Yes." No apology. No excuse. "Why?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "Because you were happy," he said. "Happy?" "I was living a lie." "But you didn't know it," Elias said, cold as ice. "You were happy in your delusion. You were loyal to him. If I had come to you 6 months ago and told you the truth, you wouldn't have believed me. You would have defended him. You would have told him I was trying to poach you. You would have warned him, and he would have hidden the assets better." He leaned in, trapping me against the door. "I needed you to hate him, Layla. Hate is a fuel that never runs out. Love burns out. Sadness fades. But hate powers empires. I needed you to burn so we could build something fireproof from the ashes." "You're sick," I spat. "I am effective," he countered. "And in 10 minutes, when we walk into that courtroom, you are going to be effective too. You can hate me later. You can scream at me, divorce me, take half my fortune when this is over. I don't care. But right now, you have a job to do. Do you want Cameron to win? Or do you want to be the woman who took back her life?" The car stopped. We were at the courthouse. Through the tinted window, I saw Cameron. He was walking up the steps, smiling, high-fiving his lawyers. Liv was behind him, wearing a white dress. My white dress. Or a copy of it. She was playing the innocent bride-to-be. I looked at Cameron. Then I looked at Elias. Elias was right. God help me, the monster was right. I could deal with the devil later. First, I had to kill the rat. "Open the door," I said. Elias nodded. A flicker of respect passed through his eyes. "After you, Mrs. Voss." The door opened. The noise of the crowd rushed in. I stepped out. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look down. I looked straight at the cameras. I put a hand on my stomach, raised my chin, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who knows exactly where the bodies are buried because she brought the shovel. Comment below if you are ready to see Cameron Hayes' face when he realizes he just brought a knife to a nuclear war. Because the courtroom doors are opening. And the slaughter is about to begin. The courtroom didn't look like the ones on TV. It wasn't mahogany and high ceilings with a gallery full of gasping spectators. It was a small, windowless room with fluorescent lights that hummed like a dying insect. It smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Because this was a closed hearing, there were only 7 people in the room. The judge, a woman with glasses on a chain and a face like carved stone. The court stenographer, Cameron. His lawyer, a man who cost $2,000 an hour and looked like he smelled of expensive cologne. Me. Elias. And our lawyer, Mr. Sterling, who looked like a funeral director. Cameron sat at the defendant's table. He looked confident. He was wearing a navy suit, his hair perfectly gelled. When I walked in, he didn't look at my face. He looked at my stomach, then sneered. He leaned over to his lawyer and whispered something that made the lawyer smirk. I sat down next to Elias. Elias didn't look at Cameron. He took a Mont Blanc pen out of his pocket, set it on the table, and aligned it perfectly parallel with the edge of his legal pad. That was it. That was his entire display of emotion. Case number 49201, the bailiff announced. Hayes versus Hayes. Paternity and support hearing. The judge looked over her glasses. We are here to establish paternity and interim support for the unborn children of Ms. Layla Vance. Mr. Hayes, you have contested paternity. Cameron stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked like he was about to give a TED Talk. Your Honor, he said, his voice smooth, practiced. I have. While I was in a relationship with Ms. Vance, her behavior was erratic. She disappeared for long periods. She was emotionally unstable. I have reason to believe that I am not the father of these children. And frankly, I refuse to be financially responsible for the consequences of her infidelity. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands gripped the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Infidelity. I spent 2 years doing his laundry and coding his software. I didn't even look at another man. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and list every date, every night, every sacrifice. But Elias's hand moved under the table. He placed his hand on my knee. He didn't squeeze. He just rested it there. A heavy, grounding weight. Wait, his touch said. Let him dig. Miss Vance, the judge asked, looking at me, do you consent to a DNA test? Mr. Sterling stood up. We have already facilitated the test, Your Honor. Expedited through a court-approved laboratory this morning. We have the results here. He walked forward and handed a sealed envelope to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. The room went silent. The only sound was the ripping of the envelope. Cameron was smirking. He thought this was a delay tactic. He thought the test would come back positive, and then he would drag out the support payments for years, burying me in legal fees. The judge opened the paper. She scanned it. Her eyebrows went up. Mr. Hayes, the judge said, the results indicate a 0% probability of paternity. Cameron froze. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at his lawyer. Then he looked at me. The smirk exploded into a grin of pure, unadulterated triumph. I knew it! Cameron shouted, slamming his hand on the table. I knew it! You see, Your Honor, she's a fraud. She tried to pin her bastards on me for a payday. He pointed a finger at me. You are pathetic, Layla. Trying to trap a billionaire? You missed. I sat there, frozen. I knew the test was faked. Elias had rigged it. But hearing Cameron celebrate the fact that he wasn't the father of the babies he had named, it broke something inside me that I didn't know was still whole. He wasn't relieved. He was ecstatic to be rid of them. Order, the judge said tiredly. Since paternity is excluded, Mr. Hayes has no legal obligation to the children. Mr. Hayes, do you wish to sign a voluntary relinquishment of all parental rights and claims to ensure no future liability? Absolutely, Cameron said. Where do I sign? I want it on record. I am not the father. I want nothing to do with them or her. Cameron, his lawyer whispered, looking a bit confused. Maybe we should. Give me the pen, Cameron snapped. The bailiff brought the clipboard over. Cameron signed his name with a flourish. A big, looping signature. The signature of a man who thought he'd just saved himself 18 years of child support. Done, Cameron said, tossing the pen down. Am I free to go? I have a merger to close in 20 minutes. Not just yet, Mr. Sterling said. His voice was soft, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. Cameron rolled his eyes. What now? She wants alimony. We weren't married. No, Sterling said. He opened his briefcase. We are moving to the second docket. The matter of intellectual property theft and fraud. Cameron laughed. Theft? Layla signed the trust papers. She signed away her rights to the code. It's ironclad. My lawyers drafted it. Ms. Vance signed those papers as a single woman, Sterling said. However, at the time of signing, she was not single. Sterling walked to the judge and handed up a second document. A marriage license. Ms. Vance has been legally married to Mr. Elias Voss for 6 months prior to the date of the trust agreement. Cameron stopped laughing. He blinked. What? Under New York state law, Sterling continued, his voice boring into the silence, intellectual property created or developed during a marriage is considered community property. Furthermore, any transfer of said property without the spousal consent of the partner is voidable. Mrs. Voss signed those papers under duress and without the counter-signature of her husband, Mr. Voss. Cameron turned slowly to look at Elias. Elias finally looked up. He took off his sunglasses. His eyes were empty, dead. You. Cameron stammered. You're married. And, Sterling raised his voice slightly, since Hayes Solutions is built entirely on code written by Mrs. Voss, property of the Voss marriage estate, your attempt to sell the company to the Gen Group this morning constitutes the sale of stolen goods. That's ridiculous. Cameron's lawyer jumped up. This is a fabrication. They weren't married. The certificate is authenticated, the judge said, looking at the paper. Dated 6 months ago. Filed in upstate New York. This is a lie. Cameron screamed. She was living with me. She was in my bed. Were you? Mr. Sterling asked. You just stated on the record, under oath, that she was erratic, disappearing for long periods, and engaging in infidelity. You just proved to this court that you had no idea what she was doing, or who she was with. You cannot have it both ways, Mr. Hayes. Either you knew her every move and you are the father, or you were estranged and unaware of her marriage. Which is it? The trap snapped shut. If Cameron claimed he knew everything, he admitted perjury about the paternity and became the father again. If he stuck to his lie about her cheating, he admitted he didn't know she got married. Cameron turned purple. He looked at the judge. He looked at me. He choked. Mr. Hayes has relinquished parental rights, Sterling said smoothly. So we accept his version of events. He was unaware. Therefore, the marriage stands unchallenged. And as of 8:55 a.m. this morning, Mr. Voss has filed an emergency injunction. Sterling turned to Cameron and smiled. A shark's smile. The sale of Hayes Solutions has been blocked. The assets of the company have been frozen pending a federal fraud investigation. And since you attempted to sell marital property of the Voss estate, Mr. Voss has exercised his right to seize the collateral. What collateral? Cameron whispered. Your personal accounts, Sterling said. Your trust fund. Your real estate. And your car. Cameron's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. And again. A frantic, continuous vibration on the wooden table. He looked down at it. From Bank of America. Alert. Account ending in 4490 frozen by court order. From Chase. Alert. Insufficient funds. From Gen Group. Deal terminated. Breach of contract. No, Cameron whispered. No. That's $200 million. You can't. That's my money. It was never your money, Elias spoke for the first time. His voice filled the small room. Deep. Resonant. Terrifying. You stole the code. You stole the labor. And you tried to throw away the woman who gave it to you. Elias stood up. He buttoned his jacket. You wanted to be a self-made man, Cameron? Congratulations. You are now unmade. Cameron looked wild. His eyes darted around the room. He looked at his lawyer, who was busy packing up his briefcase, clearly realizing he wasn't getting paid. Layla, Cameron gasped, lunging toward the table. Layla, tell them. Tell them we were together. Tell them the babies are mine. I'll take them. I'll be a dad. Just don't let him take the money. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had pushed me into a puddle yesterday. The man who had laughed while I was soaked in filth. The man who had just signed a piece of paper calling my children bastards because he thought it would save him a few dollars. He was begging. Not for me. Not for the twins. He was begging for his bank account. This was the descent. Not his fall from grace, but my descent into the darkness Elias had prepared for me. I had to choose. I could tell the truth. I could say the twins were his. I could give them their father. But if I did, he would win. He would keep the money. He would torment us forever. Or I could embrace the lie. I could erase him. I put my hand on my stomach. I felt the twins move. I don't know who you are, I said, my voice steady and cold. My husband and I are leaving. Cameron screamed. It was a raw, animal sound. He lunged over the table. The bailiff tackled him mid-air. You bitch! You whore! I'll kill you! Cameron shrieked as his face was pressed into the carpet. I'll kill both of you! Threatening a federal witness, Sterling noted calmly to the court stenographer. Add that to the record. Elias took my elbow. Walk. We walked out of the courtroom. Behind us, I could hear Cameron sobbing, screaming my name, screaming about his Lamborghini, screaming that it was all a mistake. The door clicked shut. The hallway was quiet. I stopped. I leaned against the wall, shaking. I felt like I was going to throw up. I had done it. I had destroyed him. He had nothing. No money. No company. No children. But I felt hollow. I looked at Elias. He wasn't celebrating. He was checking his watch. The helicopter is waiting, he said. We need to clear the airspace before the press finds out he's being arrested. Arrested? I asked weakly. Fraud is a felony, Layla. Attempting to sell stolen IP across international lines? He'll be in a holding cell by noon. He started walking. I watched his back. The broad shoulders. The perfect suit. He had manipulated the legal system, faked a paternity test, backdated a marriage, and destroyed a man's life in 20 minutes. And he hadn't even raised his pulse. I realized then that I hadn't just defeated a bully. I had become the accomplice to a tyrant. I followed him. Because what else could I do? He owned the house I lived in. He owned the clothes on my back. And now, legally, he was the father of my children. I had traded a man who threw mud for a man who threw lightning. And as we stepped out into the blinding sun, I wondered if I would ever be clean again. The darkest descent wasn't watching Cameron lose. It was realizing that to beat him, I had to become something I didn't recognize. And the scariest part? When I saw Cameron on the floor. I liked it. Victories are supposed to taste sweet. They're supposed to taste like champagne and relief. But as the helicopter lifted off the roof of the courthouse, leaving the chaos of New York City beneath us, victory tasted like ash. I looked down at the city. Somewhere down there, in a holding cell, Cameron was being processed. He was being fingerprinted. He was crying. He was ruined. I had gotten exactly what I wanted. So why did I feel like I was the one in handcuffs? I looked across the cabin at Elias. He had his headset on. He was tapping away on his tablet, already moving on to the next deal, the next acquisition. He had destroyed a man's life before lunch and was now checking the Nikkei index. He caught me staring. He didn't smile. He just pointed to the headset on the seat next to me. I put it on. We're going to the estate in the Hamptons. His voice came through the audio, crisp and digitized. The city is too hot right now. The press is swarming the penthouse. You need quiet. You need to incubate. Incubate. Like I was a piece of hardware. Like I was a server farm. I'm not a machine, Elias, I said into the microphone. He didn't look up. No. Machines are predictable. You are volatile. That's why you're effective. We landed 40 minutes later on a private helipad that jutted out over the Atlantic Ocean. The house, if you could call it that, was a fortress of concrete and glass perched on the edge of a cliff. It was beautiful, isolating, and terrifying. Elias walked me inside. The staff, a housekeeper, a chef, a security team, nodded at him with fearful respect. They didn't look at me. To them, I was just the latest acquisition. The cargo. The master suite is upstairs, Elias said, checking his watch. I have calls to make. Dinner is at 7. Don't go near the cliffs. He turned to walk into his study. Elias, I said. He stopped. What happens now? I asked. Cameron is gone. The company is frozen. The war is over. What happens to us? He turned slowly. The shadows of the late afternoon sun cut across his face. The war isn't over, Layla. We just won the first battle. Cameron will appeal. The press will dig. The world will want to know who the mystery wife is. You are Mrs. Voss now. You have a role to play. And if I don't want to play it? I challenged. If I want to take the settlement and leave? Elias's eyes narrowed. You read the file, Layla. You know how I operate. I don't do ex-wives. I don't do loose ends. You are in this until I say you are out. He walked into his office and closed the door. The sound of the lock clicking shut echoed through the massive, empty house. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed that looked out over the ocean. The waves were crashing against the rocks below, violent and relentless. I was trapped. I had traded a weak, greedy boy for a brilliant, controlling tyrant. Cameron wanted to use me to make money. Elias wanted to use me to prove a point to the ghost of his father. I lay back on the pillows and closed my eyes. The twins kicked. A hard, rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump. They were alive. They were innocent. And they were currently legally fatherless, living in the home of a man who saw them as leverage. I couldn't do this. I couldn't raise them here. I couldn't raise them to be pawns in a billionaire's chess game. This is the moment where most people break. This is the moment where you curl up in a ball and accept your fate. If you are listening to this, and you feel like you are backed into a corner with no way out, listen to me closely. There is always a way out. But sometimes, the way out isn't through the door. Sometimes, the way out is through the person standing in your way. I sat up. I wasn't just a pregnant woman. I wasn't just a victim. I was the woman who wrote the code that was worth $200 million. I was the woman Elias Voss had stalked for 2 years because he knew I was a genius. He called me a bad investment he intended to fix. He called me volatile. Maybe it was time to show him just how volatile I could be. I got up. I didn't go to the cliffs. I went to the library. I found a laptop on the desk. It was password protected. Of course it was. Elias Voss didn't leave doors unlocked. But Elias Voss had a blind spot. He thought I was emotional. He thought I was compromised. He thought I was thinking about cribs and diapers. He forgot that I speak the same language he does. Code. I sat down. I cracked my knuckles. I didn't try to hack his bank account. That would be impossible. I tried to hack us. I pulled up the digital registry of our marriage, the backdated license he had filed. I pulled up the community property statutes he had used to destroy Cameron. I read the fine print. And then I saw it. It was tiny. A single clause in the overarching Voss Capital Charter that Elias must have overlooked because he was so focused on destroying Cameron. Clause 44B. In the event of the principal's incapacitation or unavailability, executive voting power reverts to the primary beneficiary of the estate, provided said beneficiary is legally wed to the principal. Primary beneficiary. Legally wed. Because he had backdated our marriage 6 months, I wasn't just a new bride. I was the wife of record during the last 2 quarterly board meetings. And because he had declared me his partner in court to claim my IP, he had legally established me as a key executive. I smiled. It was a small smile. A dangerous smile. He thought he had trapped me in his world. He didn't realize he had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. I spent the next 2 hours typing. I wrote a script. A simple, elegant little program. I embedded it in the main server of the house. It wasn't a virus. It was a dead man's switch. If I didn't enter a specific code every 12 hours, the script would execute. And what would it do? It would email the entire Project Phoenix file, the stalking, the manipulation, the fake paternity test, the bribery of the judge, to the New York Times, the SEC, and the FBI. Elias wanted to destroy Cameron for fraud? If this file got out, Elias Voss wouldn't just lose money. He would go to prison for conspiracy, judicial tampering, and perjury. He had built a cage for me. I just wired the cage with explosives. At 7 p.m., I walked downstairs to the dining room. The table was set for 2. Candlelight. Crystal glasses. Elias was already seated. He stood up when I entered. A gentleman. A predator. You look rested, he said, pulling out my chair. I am, I said. I sat down. I did some reading. Oh. He poured wine into his glass, water into mine. Catching up on current events. Catching up on us, I said. I took a sip of water. I waited. Elias, I said softly, I have a question. Ask. Do you respect me? He paused. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. I respect your intellect. I respect your resilience. Why? Because you don't treat me like a partner, I said. You treat me like an employee you can't fire. Marriage is a partnership, Layla. But there is a senior partner and a junior partner. That is the nature of power. I disagree, I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I placed it on the table, screen up. It showed a countdown timer. 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 45 seconds. Elias looked at the phone. Then he looked at me. His expression didn't change, but his eyes, they sharpened. What is that? That, I said, cutting into my steak, is a dead man's switch. It's linked to a server I accessed in your library. If I don't enter a password in 11 hours, the Project Phoenix dossier, including the proof that you rigged the paternity test and bribed Judge Holloway, goes to every major news outlet in the world. The silence in the room was absolute. The crash of the waves outside seemed to stop. Elias put his fork down. For the first time since I met him, he looked surprised. Not angry. Surprised. You hacked my personal server, he asked quietly. I didn't hack it, I corrected him. I used the spousal access codes. We are married, remember? Community property. Elias stared at me. He stared at me for a long, long time. I held my breath. I knew this was the most dangerous moment of my life. He could call security. He could have me disappear. But then, the corner of his mouth twitched. And then, he did something I never expected. He laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was a genuine, deep, rich sound. He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. You weaponized my own legal strategy against me, he said, sounding almost proud. You took the trap I set for Cameron, and you walked right out of it. I'm not walking out, I said. He stopped laughing. Excuse me. I'm not leaving, Elias, I said, leaning forward. I have nowhere to go. I have 2 babies coming. I need security. I need this life. But I won't live it as a prisoner. And I won't live it as a junior partner. I pointed to the phone. I stay. We stay married. We raise these children. But we do it as equals. You don't make decisions for me. You don't manipulate me. You don't hide files from me. If you ever try to control me again, I let the timer run out. And we both burn. This was the impossible choice. I could have run. I could have used the blackmail to get cash and flee. But I chose to stay in the dragon's den. Because running is what victims do. Queens conquer the castle. Elias looked at the timer. Then he looked at me. The ice in his eyes melted, replaced by something hotter. Something like obsession. You really are her, he whispered. You are exactly what I thought you were. He stood up. He walked around the table. I stayed seated. I didn't flinch. He stopped beside my chair. He reached out and picked up my phone. He looked at the countdown. Then, he handed it back to me. Deal, he said. Deal. I asked, my voice trembling slightly. You want to be an equal? Elias said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper near my ear. Be careful what you wish for, Mrs. Voss. Equals share everything. The power, the money, and the danger. He placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, possessive. Cancel the timer, Layla. You made your point. You aren't the junior partner. I looked at him. Prove it. Prove it. Tomorrow, I said. We go back to the city. We hold a press conference. And you don't introduce me as your wife. You introduce me as the co-CEO of Voss Capital. Elias froze. Voss Capital was his soul. It was his blood. He had never shared the throne. That is ambitious, he said. That is the price, I countered. Do you want a wife who knits? Go find one. You said you wanted a wartime consigliere. Well, consiglieres get a seat at the table. He looked at me. He looked at my swollen stomach. He looked at the fire in my eyes. And then he smiled. A real, dangerous, terrifying smile. Done. He leaned down and kissed my cheek. His lips were hot. Welcome to the firm, Layla. I cancelled the timer. But I didn't delete the code. I had made my choice. I wasn't the girl in the mud anymore. I was the woman holding the detonator. And tomorrow the world would see exactly who they had messed with. But there was one loose end we hadn't accounted for. One person we thought was gone. As Elias walked back to his seat, my phone buzzed with a text message. It wasn't from Cameron. He was in jail. It wasn't from the bank. It was from an unknown number. Just an image. A photo of Liv. But she wasn't at a club. She wasn't at a party. She was standing outside the clinic where Elias had rigged the DNA test. And she was holding a file folder. The text underneath read, You didn't think I kept receipts? See you at the press conference. I looked at Elias. He was eating his steak, calm, collected, thinking he had won. He didn't know. And if you think a courtroom battle was intense, wait until you see what happens when a mistress with nothing to lose decides to crash a coronation. Comment, boss, if you are ready to see Layla take the throne, or watch it crumble. The lobby of the Voss Capitol building is not designed to make people feel welcome. It is designed to make them feel small. The ceilings are 30 feet high. The walls are black marble. And today, the floor was a sea of sharks. Hundreds of reporters, cameras, and industry titans were packed into the atrium. They weren't here for a merger announcement. They were here for blood. The news of Cameron's arrest had broken an hour ago. The video of him screaming in the courtroom had been leaked, probably by Elias, and was currently trending #1 worldwide. Everyone wanted to see the woman who took him down. Everyone wanted to see the mystery wife. I stood behind the heavy velvet curtain in the green room, watching the feed on a monitor. My heart was beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my hands, resting on my stomach, were steady. Elias stood next to me. He was adjusting his cufflinks. He looked like he was about to go to the opera, not a press conference that could end our careers. The script is simple, he said, not looking at me. I introduce you. I announce the restructuring. You say a few words about stability and future growth. We take no questions. We leave. And live? I asked. Elias paused. He finally looked at me. What about her? I hadn't shown him the text. I hadn't told him that Liv was outside with a folder full of proof that he had rigged the paternity test. Why? Because if I told Elias, he would have handled it his way. He would have had her intercepted. He would have had her silenced. And Liv would have become a victim. She would have become a martyr. I didn't want a martyr. I wanted a corpse, metaphorically speaking. I needed the world to see her for exactly what she was. Nothing, I lied. Just wondering if she's been arrested too. She is insignificant, Elias said dismissively. She is a parasite who lost her host. She will fade away. You're wrong, I thought. Parasites don't fade. They find a new host. Or they release a toxin before they die. It's time, a producer whispered, touching his earpiece. Elias offered me his arm. Ready, co-CEO? He said the title with a mix of mockery and respect. Ready, I said. We walked out. The flashbulbs were blinding. It was like walking into a lightning storm. The roar of the questions hit us like a physical wave. Mrs. Voss. Mrs. Voss. Did you plan this? Is it true Cameron Hayes is bankrupt? Mr. Voss, did you buy the company just to fire him? Elias raised one hand. The room went silent instantly. That was the power of Elias Voss. He didn't need a gavel. He just needed a gesture. Ladies and gentlemen, Elias's voice boomed through the speakers. Yesterday, Voss Capital intervened in a fraudulent transaction. We protected the market from a thief. But today is not about the past. It is about the future. He turned to me. The look in his eyes was possessive, intense. I have built this empire alone. But a king cannot rule without a queen. And a visionary cannot build without an architect. It is my distinct honor to introduce you to the new co-CEO of Voss Capital, the woman who wrote the code that changed the world, my wife, Layla Voss. The crowd gasped. Co-CEO. It was unheard of. I stepped up to the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the judgment. I saw the curiosity. Thank you, I began, my voice clear and strong. For years, I stood in the shadow of a man who used my mind to build his fortune. I know many of you see me as a victim. You see a pregnant woman who was discarded. But I am not here to talk about what was taken from me. I am here to talk about what I am taking back. I was about to pivot to the vision statement, to the script Elias had approved. Then I heard it. Liar! The scream came from the back of the room. It was shrill, desperate, and loud enough to cut through the silence. The crowd parted. Security guards moved forward, but they were too slow. Liv was marching down the center aisle. She looked deranged. Her designer dress was wrinkled. Her hair was a mess. She was clutching a thick file folder to her chest like a shield. She wasn't just Liv the influencer anymore. She was Liv the cornered animal. She's a liar, Liv screamed, pointing a shaking finger at the stage. And he is a criminal. Cut the feed, Elias ordered into the microphone, his voice cold as death. Security, remove her. No, I said. I grabbed the microphone stand. Let her speak. Elias looked at me. His eyes were wide with warning. Don't do this, his expression said. You are going off script. But I ignored him. I looked at Liv. Come up here, Liv, I said calmly. You have something to say? Say it to the world. Liv faltered for a second, surprised by the invitation. Then, emboldened by the cameras turning toward her, she ran up the stairs to the stage. She stood next to me, breathing hard, her eyes wild. You think you won? Liv hissed at me, her voice trembling. She turned to the cameras. They want you to think this is a justice story. They want you to think Cameron is the bad guy. But look at this. She ripped open the folder. She pulled out a stack of papers and waved them in the air. This is proof, she yelled. Proof that Elias Voss bribed the paternity clinic. Proof that he paid the lab technician $50,000 to fake the results. Cameron is the father. They stole his children. They stole his company based on a lie. The room exploded. Reporters were shouting. Flashbulbs were going off like strobe lights. Elias took a step toward her. He looked ready to snap her neck. I put a hand on his chest. Stop. I stepped forward. I didn't look at the papers.
I luktat liv.
Is that it? I asked.
Liv blingsked.
What? Is that your smoking gun? I asked, my voice bored. You have receipts from a clinic? You have a text message chain. I have the truth.
Liv skrivmed.
You're a fraud. The marriage is fake. The test is fake. You're going to jail. I smiled. And for the first time, Liv looked terrified. Because she realized she wasn't looking at Layla the victim. She was looking at Layla the Voss. Liv, I said gently into the microphone. Did you really think I didn't know you were following the courier? The color drained from her face. You see, I continued, addressing the cameras now. Liv thinks she has exposed a conspiracy. But what she has actually exposed is herself. I signaled to the control booth. Play the video. Behind us, the massive screen that displayed the Voss Capital logo flickered. It wasn't a video of a clinic. It was a screen recording of a phone. Liv's phone. The crowd went silent. How?
Liv whispered.
How did you get that? You logged into the company Wi-Fi yesterday, I explained. You forgot that I wrote the security protocols. I have mirrored your device for the last 24 hours. On the screen, a text thread appeared. It was between Liv and Cameron, dated 2 days ago. Liv, he's selling the company tomorrow. Once the check clears, we dump the pregnant cow. I've already contacted the tabloids. We'll frame her for cheating. Cameron, make sure you get it on video. I want her humiliated. I want her to crawl. Liv, don't worry, babe. I'll make sure the world laughs at her. And then we spend the money. The crowd murmured. It was cruel, yes. But not illegal. That's not a crime.
Liv yelled.
Being mean isn't a crime. No, I agreed. But this is. The screen changed. It showed a bank transfer. From Hayes Solutions corporate account to O. Moretti Consulting, Shell. Amount, $500,000. Date, yesterday. You see, I said, my voice hardening. While Cameron was busy trying to sell the company, you were busy looting it. You transferred $500,000 of company funds, my company funds, into a personal account just hours before the freeze. Liv shook her head. No. Cameron told me to. He said it was a bonus. And here, I pointed to the screen again, is the DM you sent to the lab technician at the clinic before the test was even run. The message appeared. Liv, if the test comes back positive, we have a problem. Can we pay to make it negative? Cameron doesn't want the baggage. The room gasped. I turned to Liv. You accused Elias of rigging the test. But the records show you tried to rig it first. You wanted to erase my children just as much as Cameron did. Elias didn't bribe the doctor to lie. He paid the doctor to ensure you couldn't tamper with the samples. It was a lie. A beautiful, complex, unprovable lie. Elias had rigged it. But by showing Liv's intent to rig it, I created a fog of war. I made her the villain. You tried to buy a negative result, I said, my voice dripping with disdain. But you were too cheap. So now, you stand here, waving papers you don't understand, trying to save a man who you were stealing from. I took a step closer to her. The microphone picked up my whisper. Cameron is in a federal holding cell, Liv. And that $500,000 you stole? That's grand larceny. You aren't a whistleblower. You're an accomplice. Liv dropped the folder. The papers scattered across the stage. She looked around, realizing the cameras weren't eating up her story. They were eating her. I turned to the security guards. Officers, I said. This woman is in possession of stolen corporate funds. I believe the FBI is already in the building for Mr. Hayes. Why don't you add her to the manifest? Liv screamed as the guards grabbed her arms. No, no. It's a lie. Layla, please. I'm pregnant too. You can't do this. I froze. The guards stopped. I looked at her stomach. It was flat. You're pregnant? I asked. Yes.
Liv sobbed.
6 weeks. Cameron's baby. Please, Layla. Us moms have to stick together. It was the Hail Mary, the desperate plea for female solidarity. I looked at her. I remembered the mud. I remembered the laughter. I remembered her filming me while I shivered in the cold. I leaned into the microphone. If you are pregnant, Liv, I said, my voice devoid of mercy, then I truly pity that child, because it will grow up knowing its mother sold its father for a handbag. I waved my hand. Take her away. Liv was dragged screaming from the stage. The cameras followed her exit, capturing every moment of her downfall. The ruined comments on the live stream must have been flying so fast they were a blur. Silence returned to the atrium. I stood alone at the podium. My heart was pounding, but I felt light. I had done it. I had destroyed the man who broke me. I had destroyed the woman who mocked me. And I had done it without hiding behind a man. I turned to Elias. He was standing a few feet away. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at me. His expression was unreadable to the cameras, but I knew him now. I saw awe. I saw fear. And I saw desire. He walked over to the microphone. He placed his hand over mine on the stand. As I said, Elias spoke to the stunned room. My wife, the co-CEO. He didn't take the mic back. He left me center stage. I looked into the lens of the main camera. I knew Cameron would see this eventually. I knew the world was watching. Voss Capital is under new management, I said. We don't just invest in companies. We invest in justice. And for anyone out there who thinks kindness is a weakness. I paused, touching the diamond necklace Elias had given me that morning. I suggest you check the weather report. Because the storm isn't over. It's just getting started. I walked off the stage. Elias followed me. As we reached the wings, out of sight of the press, Elias grabbed my arm. He pulled me into the shadows of the corridor. His breathing was ragged. You risked everything, he whispered. If she had proof. She had nothing, I said, looking up at him. Because I control the narrative now, Elias. You taught me that. He looked at me, and then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was violent and hungry, a kiss between two survivors, two monsters. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. You are dangerous, he murmured. I know, I said. Are you afraid? Terrified, he admitted. And I have never been more in love. I smiled. I had won. But as we walked toward the elevator, toward the penthouse, toward our life at the top of the food chain, I felt a kick. The twins. They were waking up. And I realized that the real battle wasn't against Cameron or Liv. The real battle would be raising two children in a house built on vengeance, with a father who was a shark and a mother who had just learned how to bite. 3 months later, the rain returned to New York City. But this time, the sound didn't make me flinch. It didn't remind me of the cold sludge hitting my face or the laughter of people who wanted to see me break. Standing here, in the nursery of the penthouse, the rain just sounded like music. It tapped against the reinforced glass, a gentle rhythm that seemed to be lulling the two bassinets behind me to sleep. Leo and Maya. My twins. They were 3 weeks old. They were tiny, loud, and absolutely perfect. And they were finally asleep. I heard the front door open downstairs. The heavy thud of security locks engaging. Then, footsteps on the stairs. Not the hurried steps of a CEO, but the tired, steady steps of a father coming home. Elias walked into the nursery. He had discarded his suit jacket downstairs. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted. The sheer weight of running a global empire usually etched deep lines around his eyes, but the moment he crossed the threshold of this room, those lines smoothed out. He didn't speak to me first. He went straight to the cribs. He leaned over, resting his large hands on the railing. He watched them breathe for a long moment, checking the rise and fall of their chests, a habit he hadn't been able to break since we brought them home from the hospital. "They're out," I whispered. Elias turned to me. A soft smile broke through his stoic mask. Finally. I thought I heard Leo practicing his opera scales on the monitor. He walked over to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He didn't pull me in like a possession anymore. He held me like I was the only thing keeping him upright. "How was the sentencing?" I asked quietly. Today was the day. The final chapter of the old book. "It's over," Elias said, his voice calm. "The judge gave Cameron 12 years. Fraud, embezzlement, corporate theft. The evidence regarding Liv's involvement secured her a plea deal, probation and community service, provided she testifies against him in the civil suits." I nodded, feeling a strange sensation in my chest. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel that rush of adrenaline I felt in the courtroom when we destroyed him. But I didn't. I just felt peace. "He cried," Elias added, almost as an afterthought, "when the gavel came down. He looked at the gallery. I think he was looking for you." "He wouldn't have found me," I said. "I was busy." "You were," Elias agreed, kissing my forehead. "You were doing something far more important." He meant being a mother. He meant running the company. We walked out of the nursery and into the living room. The fire was lit. It was warm. "There is one more thing," Elias said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It wasn't the scary kind of legal notice. It was just a plain white envelope with a prison stamp. "It's from him," Elias said. "He asked his lawyer to give it to me. For you." My heart stuttered. I took the envelope. "Do you want me to burn it?" Elias asked. "You don't have to read it. We can throw it in the fire right now and pretend he never existed." I looked at the fire. It would be so easy. Just erase the last link. But I shook my head. "No. Secrets are what got us into this mess, Elias. I'm done with secrets." I opened the letter. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't a threat. It was barely a paragraph, written in shaky handwriting. "Layla, I have a lot of time to think now. I think about the rain. I think about the mud. I realized something in here. I didn't lose the company because of Elias. I didn't lose my freedom because of the lawyers. I lost everything the moment I drove that car through the puddle. I lost my soul. I know I don't deserve to be their father. I don't deserve to know their names. But please, just tell them I'm sorry. Not for getting caught, but for leaving."
See.
I read it twice. Tears pricked my eyes. Not tears of sadness for him, but tears of release. He finally understood. It wasn't about the money. It was about the betrayal of human decency. I handed the letter to Elias. He read it. His expression didn't change. "He claims them," I whispered. "In his head, he knows they are his. He knows the DNA test we showed the court was managed." This was the moment of truth. I looked up at Elias. "Elias, We never talked about it. Really talked about it. The biology. You know they aren't yours. You know that somewhere, deep down, they have his blood. Does that bother you? Elias looked at me. He looked at the letter. Then, he did something that changed me forever. He folded the letter neatly and placed it on the table. He took my hands in his. Layla, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Biology is just chemistry. It's protein strings and enzymes. That's all. He gestured toward the nursery door. Being a father isn't about DNA. It isn't about whose name is on a birth certificate. Being a father is showing up. It's the 3 a.m. feedings. It's worrying about the fever. It's promising to protect them from the monsters, even if the monster used to be you. He stepped closer, his dark eyes searching mine. I didn't fall in love with you because of a business deal. And I didn't accept those children as part of the merger. I chose them. Just like I chose you. They are Voss's because I say they are. They are mine because I love them. And nothing, not a letter, not a prison sentence, not a blood test, will ever change that. I broke. The Iron Lady of Voss Capital, the woman who stared down the press, finally cried. I buried my face in his chest, and he held me. I realized then that I had been fighting the wrong war. I thought the goal was to win. I thought the goal was to make Cameron pay. But the real victory wasn't seeing Cameron in a cell. The real victory was standing here, in this room, with a man who knew all my scars and loved me anyway. We're going to be okay, Elias whispered into my hair. We're going to be good. Yes, I sniffled, pulling back and wiping my eyes. We are. I picked up the letter. I walked to the fireplace. What are you doing? Elias asked. I'm not burning it out of hate, I said. I'm burning it because we don't need it. We don't need his apology. And we don't need his permission to be happy. I dropped the paper into the flames. We watched it turn to ash, the sparks floating up the chimney and out into the rainy night. Elias poured us 2 glasses of wine. We sat on the couch, not as business partners plotting a takeover, but as a husband and wife enjoying the silence. You know, Elias said, a mischievous glint in his eye. The board is expecting us to ring the opening bell on Monday. The stock is up 40% since you took over as co-CEO. Let it rise, I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. But I might be late. Oh, trouble with the schedule. No, I said softly. I promised Leo and Maya we'd go for a walk in the park. If it stops raining. Elias kissed the top of my head. If it's raining, we'll just bring an umbrella. A big one. I laughed. A genuine, happy laugh. And that is where our story ends. Not with a bang. Not with a shocking twist. But with a promise. I started this story in the mud, humiliated and alone. I thought I had to become hard to survive. I thought I had to become a villain to beat a villain. But I was wrong. The mud didn't break me. It cleaned me. It washed away the person I was pretending to be and revealed the person I was meant to become. And Elias. He wasn't my savior. He was my partner. He didn't fix me. He just held the flashlight while I fixed myself. If you're listening to this, and you're going through your own storm, if you feel like you are covered in mud and the whole world is laughing, please listen to me. Do not let the pain turn you into stone. Do not let the betrayal make you cruel. Justice is important, yes. Stand up for yourself. Fight back. But don't forget to leave the door open for love. Because the greatest revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. The greatest revenge is being happy. It's thriving. It's finding a love so real and so deep that the person who hurt you becomes nothing more than a footnote in the story of your amazing life. Thank you for listening to my journey. Thank you for being my witness. If you believe that good can come from bad, if you believe in second chances, and if you believe that family is defined by love and not blood, please hit that subscribe button. Join our family. Because we are just getting started, and I have a feeling the best chapters are yet to come. My name is Layla Voss, and this wasn't just a story about revenge. It was a story about coming home.